ran, he could head her off before she reached her minions at the outpost. Well, he did love a good chase. Don't look down, he thought. Bernardo, smash! He was closing on her. He could smell her fear. He tried not to think about the interrogators at the secret base. What they'd do to her. Maybe it didn't have to end that way. Maybe he could talk to her. But, after all, there were worse things the Imperials had done to friends of his. Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails. Bernardo reached the outpost. The Imperials there were no match for him. Soon after, Zenobia limped up the path. When she realized he was already in front of her, she didn't even try to run. "Oh, you left without saying goodbye." Again, he said, "Please, I'm enjoying this a little too much," she said, shaken. "Oh, spare us the chit-chat, would you?" said Lapino as he shackled her hands so she couldn't throw spells. She knows all his plans. All the way back to the Farfarer, Lapino nagged Renato about how the interrogators would pry all the intel out of Zenobia. How that would turn the tides in the imminent battle. All they had to do was take her to the rebels' secret base. Renato didn't like to think about what the interrogators would do to her. Couldn't he just talk to her? As they reached the ruins, Renato could see ravens everywhere, searching for the rebel base. They'd have to hide the Farfarer or go on foot. "What if we get separated?" asked Lapino, for once thinking ahead. "I'll show you a map to the base." Renato told Lapino. "Renato, don't do this," said Zenobia. "We were friends once. We..." "Shut it, witch, or I'll shackle your mouth too." said Lupino. And then, a few moments later, they touched down. As Lupino pulled Zenobia off the Farfarer, Bernardo readied himself for the battle ahead.
It's stupid, but it smelled like you.
What?
He said confused. Then why didn't you ride? Why didn't you far speak?
Oh, save the romantic nostalgia. Let's go! Shrieked Lupino. So Renato launched himself down the path to the secret base.
Ooh, sparkly, thought Bernardo.
Missed her. Not Zenobia. Hypatia, the kid's mother. Renato had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid type. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her. Misgivings. It had been Lupino's idea to capture Zenobia. Lupino who'd guessed she'd run to the outpost. There was something wrong with the way none of Lupino's plans had gone wrong yet. It wasn't like him. Not quite enough, thought Renato. In your next life.
What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship. Oh, they really ought to put a railing on this thing, he thought.
They caught their breath. It's beautiful, she said, looking at the ruins. This used to be the library of Ubar, he said. Before your father's ravens smashed it. Do we have to talk politics? She asked. That's not how I want to remember you, she said with an odd, wistful look at her face. She was as beautiful as she'd ever been, and as brave. Peppino huffed. They got back on the trail.
Okay, let's make this quick. I'm on my break in literally 2 minutes. People had laughed at the government workbench placement program, but you could see the benefits everywhere. Sorry, mustache, thought Renato.
Say goodnight, Gracie, said Renato, wondering who Gracie was.
The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. No one beat Bernardo at hot potato. The new pathway made Renato curious. If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger. As they made their way to the secret rebel base, Renato felt strange. Zenobia was his prisoner, yet somehow she felt more like an old friend. He wanted to tell her all his secrets, but suddenly, the ruins lit up with thousands of fireworks. There was a thunderous roar and dust rose. The caves were collapsing.
The caves!
"You've been playing me?" Renato said, and he stared at Zenobia. "I'm sorry, everything went dark." When Renato came to, he had a terrible headache. Also, Zenobia's sword was at his throat. And her shackles were gone. So was Lupino. "The terrible thing is," he said, "I really have missed you. Now that we've destroyed the rebellion, would you consider becoming an advisor to the Emperor's daughter?" "I'm no one's servant. Everybody serves. Even if it's only destiny. I like to choose my own destinies," he said. "The whole point of a destiny is you can't choose." "Oh, never mind," she said. "Look, if I see you again, I'll have to kill you." He watched her ship soar away. He would see her again, he decided, even if he had to fight his way across the entire fleet. The Imperial fleet was cleaning up the few rebel remnants. For only a moment, he thought about running. But heroes don't run, even when the world is against them. Even when their cause is hopeless, and their efforts futile, and pointless, and useless, and death painful and guaranteed. He's decided to stop thinking for a while. You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato.
Renato wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles. Renato's arm was sore, his armor wet with raven blood. He was tired of death. But death was not yet tired of him. The rebels were losing. Badly. In some other universe, Renato thought, he and Zenobia had left sword fu school together, taken other names and sailed off into the mists. But not this Zenobia, and not him. For him, there was nothing to do but forge ahead. Kill the Emperor and end this. Oh, this really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it? Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Again. This time, he'd make an end of him. He'd screwed up last time, but he had a good feeling about this time. At last, he reached the Emperor's ship. Zenobia was there. "Why'd you have to come back?" she said. "Guess I'm just serving my destiny." He shrugged. "You don't even know what that word means," she said. "Do you ever wonder if things have been different all the time?" she said, and drew her sword. In the end, Renato lay bleeding out on the deck. Zenobia sat by his side, upset. "What are you so upset about?" he asked. "You wouldn't understand. Why didn't you tell me you were going to leave school? I was afraid you'd convince me not to." "I guess I'll have to buy you a drink in the halls of the Valiant then," he told her, and then he was gone. And just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar.
The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you